Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You've joined us again with Rabbi Stuart Federow, and we've done a couple of shows over the last few weeks on definitions, and today we're going to tackle some more. We're going to start off with the word kosher. Everyone knows the word because, especially even in London, you're going to buy a second-hand car and the guy will go, "Is it kosher?" And then that literally means that is it legit? Is it all checked out and sorted? But obviously that's not the root of the word.
No,
So
but that's
again,
very interesting.
yeah, it's used a lot. It's like totally within the vocabulary of most people, although they probably understand it has a Jewish heritage, but not maybe what that
It's
implies.
totally irrelevant to our talk, but in the United States, in the earliest days of the police forces, they developed a word for the senior police officer that would mentor, beginners, and they were called the rabbi,
Really?
really, in the police force. The mentor of the young, newly made police officers, their mentor would be their rabbi.
Because
Interesting.
rabbi literally means teacher, doesn't it?
Definitely not.
No,
It does
really?
not. No, it
Okay.
does not mean teacher.
Oh, then we'll start with the word rabbi. Tell us about rabbi and what that means.
Okay, the word rabbi does not mean teacher. It comes from the root letters resh vet, which means great, in the sense of quantity, great, large.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so for example, there's a prayer that Jews recite as part of our liturgy that is called Shalom Rav. Okay, Rav, Rabbi, which would be transliterated as rabbi, okay, translated would be my greatness. Okay, so Shalom Rav would mean a great peace. Okay, so the word is great. The idea is great in knowledge of Judaism. And if you really want to understand the term rabbi, the better definition, in my opinion, of what it means is judge, because a rabbi is ordained by a recognized body to adjudicate Jewish law, to know what the halacha is, and to be able to say to people who ask, how do I do this? What do I do? Is this okay? Is whatever, is because they know the halacha well enough. They have a great knowledge of it that they can adjudicate Jewish law. That's really what it means. So even though nobody's going to, I would translate the word Rav or rabbi as judge, because they're adjudicating Jewish law. Jason, I very deeply, warmly revere you. Does that make you a reverend?
No.
But reverend comes from. I thought reverend means someone who is revered. If I revere you, you're a reverend. That's what people do with the word rabbi. They think that it means teacher. So if they teach, they must be a rabbi. And that's not how it works. It means someone who is ordained by a recognized Jewish body, a yeshiva, usually, who ordains a person to adjudicate Jewish law because they've studied enough that they are great in Jewish knowledge to be able to adjudicate questions asked and specific areas of Jewish law. You can be ordained in kashrut. You can be ordained in certain individual fields. Most rabbis have not just one area, but multiple areas for which they've received smicha, ordination. This gets more and more complicated as we go through it, doesn't it? Smicha, smoke to support. Okay, you may remember in Tanakh where someone lays their hands on someone, the laying on of hands, and the formal ritual of making someone a rabbi who has gone through the yeshiva is a laying on of hands of three of the main rabbis at the yeshiva who are effectively ordaining him by doing that. That's really where it comes from. So not just because they're a teacher, they teach. That means any first grader, second grade teacher, third grade teacher, middle school teacher, because they're a teacher, they're a rabbi. It's not how it works. just like I certainly revere you, but that doesn't make you a reverend. So, at any rate.
Now, you mentioned kashrut, so we're going to have to explain what kashrut is.
Okay. The word kosher does not mean clean. It has nothing whatsoever to do with health. It has to do with what is fitting or proper. Kosher means fitting or proper. Kosher laws are usually understood to be the laws of eating. So the question is what is fitting or proper for a Jew to be eating? It begins, of course, with Leviticus chapter 11. And in Leviticus 11, it basically says, tell the people of Israel, these are the things you can eat. And it lists what the, not markings, but the...
the attributes of the animals.
Thank you, exactly. What to look for. So if it's domesticated mammal, it has to have split hooves and...
Chew the cud.
But if you take a look at the animal, okay, and if you can find it, maybe you'll put up a picture of what split hooves really means. You know, it's like two fingers, and there's nail here and nail here, and there's space in between. Okay, and also to chew the cud. Chewing the cud means to have multiple stomachs. To me, this is gross because I have a queasy stomach when it comes to this thing. Multiple stomachs, and like a cow will, pardon the expression, vomit up, regurgitate from one stomach, chew it up even more, and then put it in a different stomach in their own bodies. That's the requirement, to have split hooves and chew its cud. Okay, if an animal, read Leviticus 11, it's right there. If an animal like the pig only does one but not both, okay, one or the other but not both, it's not kosher. Okay.
Which means it doesn't necessarily mean, because I've heard this before, it doesn't necessarily mean the animal's somehow evil. It's just not suitable for human consumption.
Suitable. That's exactly it. It's not kosher, it's not suitable, it's not fitting, it's not proper for a Jew to be eating it. Okay. Then it moves on to fish. Okay. For anything in the waters, rivers, lakes, oceans, seas, streams, I don't think I've missed anything. It has to have both fins and scales. Okay, this is what Leviticus tells us. This is what to look for. And take the word kosher as fitting or proper. If I say to you, think of a fish, are you going to think of an eel?
No, you generally think of little Nemo. Yeah.
Exactly, because it has fins and scales. Okay, you're not going to think of an octopus if I say fish. You're not going to think of
a lobster.
I don't know what. Lobster. You know something? I take a look at a cockroach, okay, or maybe not a cockroach, but I take a look at a bug, and then I take a look at the shellfish, and they're not a whole lot different.
They aren't. And
to me, they look like bugs, but you certainly don't think of a lobster when you say the word fish. It's not a fitting or proper image of the concept of what we get out of the ocean, streams, rivers, lakes, whatever. So I think that's one thing that actually maybe, the origins of fins and scales. It's not fitting or proper. You think of a trout, okay? You think of a salmon. You think of bass. Something that's got fins and scales. Looks like a fish. So...
And then you got those little sneaky ones like sharks,
Right,
or no scales.
What's the original caviar from?
Oh, yeah, it's like a dogfish.
Sturgeon.
Yeah, sturgeon. And then there's
sturgeon,
and there's rays.
Which begins. I think it's the sturgeon that begins its life with scales, but as it grows older, it has a skin. Well, skin is not kosher. Okay, it's got to have scales. So the question becomes: Is caviar kosher? And the answer is, if it comes from the right fish. So, at any rate, okay. So, obviously, the first level or standard of kosher, okay, is what kind of animal you're dealing with. The second level or characteristic, I don't know what to call it, is how do you go about killing the animal? And you can debate with me all you want about my next statement, but in my opinion, the Jewish way of, look, if you have to kill an animal for your own sustenance, at least do it humanely. You know, at the base of Judaism, okay, the Noahide laws, you cannot cut the limb off of a living animal, which basically means humane treatment of animals. But how you kill the animal, okay, should at least be as instantly and painlessly as possible, because that's the mercy you show to the animal. And there's actually a whole lot bound up in this that people don't realize. And remind me, I'll get to it in a minute. But if you have to kill something for your own sustenance, at least do it humanely. And the Jewish way of killing is to kill the animal as quickly and as painlessly as possible. Have you ever had a paper cut?
Mm.
But you never know really where it got it from?
Right.
Okay, but all of a sudden it starts stinging and you think, what did I do? That's because the paper is so sharp, it cuts you without having pain. And the pain comes when something gets inside it, like sweat, which is salty, which stings. Okay. The blades on the knife that is used to kill the animal is so sharp. Don't believe me. Even with my queasy stomach, go to a slaughterhouse and watch. And Jason, maybe you can find this, but Saturday Night Live, okay, satire TV show here, been on for decades. Okay, they used to do these spoof songs, and they start out. This is one scene. It's probably the Dan Aykroyd days, where they're all sitting around a campfire and it's looking very cowboy-ish. Okay, and in a very cowboy kind of tune, he starts singing about, come on, little doggies, meaning the calves and the cattle. You know, we're going to the slaughterhouse. And it begins with, it draws you in by being this wonderful Western cowboy music. And then it says, and then it starts going into details about how the animal is slaughtered in a non-kosher slaughterhouse. And it's disgusting. And, you know, it's the typical Saturday Night Live, well, the old Saturday Night Live, of turning something on its ear. And I wish to God I could find that somehow, somewhere.
We have examples in the Jewish Museum here of the blades that we use. Those long, rectangular kind of. They don't look like knives as much because they've got like a square end.
Let's pretend that this is the blade. Okay, right here.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to take your fingers this direction and this direction. If there's a nick in the metal, you can't use it, because then it's ripping the flesh and not cutting the flesh, which is undue pain for the animal. And you have to do that before you slaughter and after slaughter. So if it's there after slaughter, the animal cannot be used by Jews. Okay.
Back in the day, it's an interesting fact about Ireland and its Jewish population. Back in the day, in the early 1900s, Ireland was exporting more kosher meat to Argentina than Argentina was making itself. And now you think of Argentina as this big steak, you know,
absolutely,
where the
absolutely.
But no, the koshering here was done, and they grow on the lovely green fields of Ireland, and then the meat was shipped off to Argentina. Yeah, it's not anymore, sadly, but it was a thriving trade here back then.
Jason, the other element that people don't realize with kosher slaughter is the demand of halakha to have a one-on-one confrontation between human and animal. In a slaughterhouse, and even in this Saturday Night Live spoof song, okay, it's mechanized. The animal is moved along. You know, you have a basically what amounts to an air gun swooping down and drilling it looks like a pencil, but it's made of steel, okay, which may or may not work. And then the animal is continued to be cut up in pieces, whether or not it's fully dead. Horrible. But it's machinery. But in Jewish slaughter, you have to have a confrontation of human to animal. And people, you know, it drives me crazy. People will say, oh, kosher, that means blessed by a rabbi. Well, first of all, as you well know, Judaism doesn't bless things. We bless or praise God for things. Okay, the wine, praised are you, O God. Okay, that's how they begin. We're not blessing wine. We're blessing God, praising God for the sweetness and joy of the Sabbath, for example, reflected in the sweetness and joy we receive from the wine.
But
So,
with the death of an animal, you take an active part in
it's a
understanding
one-on-one,
that
and
life is going from that
and
animal.
halachically, the person who is actually the actual person slaughtering is supposed to have a compassion, okay, a visible, knowable feeling for what he's doing, so that he's not killing the animal out of hatred, but there's a compassion. He knows what he's doing is to take the life of the animal, and it's an act of killing. You know, I'm not belittling that or making that light, okay, but he knows what he's doing is compassionately doing it, making him much more inclined to do it correctly. And by the way, another thing is by making the act of slaughter a religious ritual, you ensure that it must be done exactly correctly every single time. Because as a religious ritual, you're going to be more zealous to see to it that you're doing it exactly correctly.
And it stops people just running out and doing whatever they feel.
Shooting an animal and cutting, and eating it like tigers would with a gazelle. All right, so the first level, Leviticus 11 is what animals are allowed to be eaten, are fitting and proper for Jews to consume. The second level is how the animal is slaughtered. Okay, the third level is how the meat is prepared, and the halakha holds that you cannot eat blood. That's the whole point of Leviticus 17. Okay, is if you're going to eat an animal, don't eat its blood. Okay, so the third level or characteristic is that the blood must be removed, and the religious ritual way of doing that is to use a special kind of salt, where each individual grain is very large, okay, and it's called a koshering salt. And you go to the grocery store, you can sometimes see
a box
kitchen of salt
that
says kosher salt. Okay, it's not the salt is kosher; it's that the salt is the right kind to use for koshering meat. And you completely cover it with salt. Let the salt soak up the blood. Okay, rinse the salt off, which takes away the blood, and do it again. Okay, and I believe a third time. Okay, now you just go to the grocery store and get meat already slaughtered and salted for you, so you don't. Okay, the fourth. Okay, what kind of animal? How the animal is slaughtered? How the meat is prepared, and then the fourth one is how it is served. And by that I mean the following. 3 times, I believe it's 3 times, in the Torah it says you will not take a baby goat and boil it alive in its own mother's milk. What is that all about? We know, actually from archaeological digs, that it was a pagan custom, an idolatrous custom. Who can understand the mind of idolaters? I mean, it's weird. But they saw great, wonderful, magical things that the liquid that's supposed to take the life of the animal, that's supposed to give life to the animal, is used to take the life of the animal. They thought this was great and wonderful magic or whatever. So the milk, Jason, with all due respect to we who are male, women get this better than men do, is that milk is life-giving, okay, and they would use it to kill the animal by boiling it literally alive in its own mother's milk. Jews say, humans would say that. God also said that, and he tells the Jews, you're not supposed to be like the pagans and do this horrible thing of taking a baby goat and boiling it alive in its own mother's milk. Okay, but Judaism sees something else in this, and that is the separation between life and death. You don't mix life with death. That milk is life and life-giving, and meat is something that died. And you don't mix something that is life and life-giving with something that is dead. It's like this. It's a weird combination.
Isn't there when the body's separated as well? There are parts which won't go for general retail. There's specific. I
I'm not
can't
sure what you
believe I
said.
started talking about this. There's an area of the animal.
The tushy, the tuchus, the tachat, the
Bottom.
rear end of the animal, the southbound side of a northbound. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes and no. Okay. We know from the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel and having his what amounts to the sciatic nerve, and so we don't eat the sciatic nerve. And if you take a look at the rear end of the animal, the sciatic nerves go off in all sorts of different split offs and everything else. It's extremely labor intensive work. The meat, the muscle tissue around the sciatic nerve, if you can get the sciatic nerve away from it, is actually okay to be eaten. But it's so labor intensive because the nerves are so, intricate in themselves that, first of all, it's a specialist who knows how to do this, and they're fewer and further between now. Okay, and second of all, it makes it so incredibly expensive that they just don't eat it. Okay.
And what about the fat of the animal?
The what?
The fat on the animal.
Okay. If people would read carefully, if I remember correctly, the fat they're talking about is the fat that's around the organs. It's not the fat within the muscle tissue. It's the fat that is seriously, not me, of course, but some people have fatty liver. Okay, where the liver itself is made up too much fat. Okay. But there's also fat that comes around the liver and the organs. And if I remember correctly, that's the fat that is forbidden to be eaten. Not fat in general, like, if there's fat on muscle or whatever.
Yeah, within because often the secret or the proof that a good steak is a good steak is the marbling of the fat within the meat.
Right. But it's within the meat. Okay. Look, you watch television, you see these advertisements for fast food restaurants. They're not going to say, "Come in because we've got the best ground up muscle tissue of a cow that you've ever tasted." They give it names, Big Mac, Whopper, okay, to avoid the fact of making people realize they're eating the ground up muscle tissue of a cow. That's what hamburger is. Okay, so again, I think it goes back to fitting or proper.
If only it was only the ground up muscle tissue of a cow. And there's a reason they say 100% beef and not 100% muscle tissue.
Right. Oh, that's very true. And there's one fast food restaurant that brags, our hamburger patties are much more are fresher than anybody else's because they're never frozen. They are kept at 34, 36 degrees. In other words, just a few degrees above freezing, so they can technically say our meat is fresher because it was never frozen. But it's
there was a company in the UK that now kind of makes ice cream, but it used to be famous for making sausages, and it was called Walls, Walls, and famously in the 80s, a comedy show spoofed, and they said, we take the genitals and eyes and brains and ears and toes and intestine and heart and lungs and tongue, and we put them all into our sausage. It's 100% pork. And it said walls, about the only thing that isn't in them are walls. It's very good, but that's the same with a burger. If you don't know where it's come from, you don't ever assume you're just getting really good cuts of muscle, because if it came from the cow, they can call it beef. And it's just a little bit, if you buy kosher though, you know that the selection, the library of pieces is not going to have just been, they don't just empty the rubbish bin into the grinder.
Right. Yeah. At any rate,
I've lost my whole appetite now.
And yeah, actually me too. I have a queasy stomach to begin with when it comes to this stuff. But okay, so going back, it's what kind of animals are okay, fitting, proper to be eaten, how the animal is killed, how the meat is prepared, and then how it's served. How it's served is that, as I said, the rabbis see this concept of don't boil a baby goat in its own mother's milk to mean a lot more, that we don't mix life with death. Okay? Milk is life-giving. Meat is something that's dead. And how this gets expressed in the real world, okay, is that no cheeseburgers, okay, if it's real cheese, okay, but there's fake cheese now. I can't even do that. I can't. There's something they have called Bacos, which is supposed to be like sprinkly bacon, except it's pure soy.
Oh.
Okay, it's artificially flavored soy, and it's got a hechsher. It's, you hear the word kosher, hechsher. You hear the okay. So it's derived from the same term. It means the symbol on the package that shows it's approved by a governing body of Vad Ha'ir, or like in Houston, it's called the Houston Kashrut Association. They certify it as being truly kosher, and the company is allowed, therefore, to put the Kashrut Association's special symbol, which is called the hechsher, the seal of approval that it is in fact kosher, on the package of the product. Food is certified. If it's meat, that no milk or milk products were used in its manufacture. If it's a dairy product, it's certifying a lot more than this, but minimally, that there's no meat or meat product that ever was engaged in the production of that. You don't mix milk and meat. It's not just you don't have cheeseburgers, okay, but you completely separate dishes. You don't even allow the possibility of meat or meat products combining with milk or milk products to consume. Separate dishes, and it depends on your own personal standards how strictly. Some people will have completely separate kitchens, 2 refrigerators, 2 ovens, 2 of everything. Not everybody can afford that or do that. So, you have to, there are different ways of going about it. And there's so much more involved with keeping kosher. I keep saying this, okay, in the same way that a computer is applied mathematics, so is religion applied psychology. Okay. And people neglect the idea that there are other benefits that accrue from doing halacha that are not always obvious. Okay. And, God is not stupid. God knows if there are these side benefits, not the intent of why we do this. That's for holiness. You don't keep kosher it's not the new Food and Drug Administration, okay, certifying the health of it. It's for holiness' sake. But God is not stupid. If there are other benefits that accrue from doing it, we're more likely to do it. And therefore, there's a whole theology in that. Anyway, the point is that why do we want our kids to have other sports or play an instrument? Because if you are disciplined in one thing, you will be successful at many things. And one discipline, probably the hardest thing to discipline ourselves, that's why we use fasting as the way to afflict ourselves, as the Bible commands, for Yom Kippur. Okay, because the hardest thing to control, for some of us, is what we eat. And so if you can control what you eat, okay, if you can give yourself a what's the word? I think I just used it, a discipline, okay, in one thing you'll succeed at many things. And there are other advantages to keeping kosher other than, making you holy, bringing holiness in your life in a very direct response to God's commandment, because by keeping kosher, I'm in a direct relationship with God because I am keeping God's commandments. Okay, but there are other advantages. If you keep kosher, you have a discipline. Our children, okay, they know how to say no from the moment they understand to an offer of, hey, you want a pepperoni pizza? But if they have learned to say no to what can smell good, especially when you're hungry, but it's treif, so they not kosher, so they don't eat it, they can also learn the discipline to say no when somebody says, hey, kid, you want some heroin? Hey, kid, you want to take a puff of this marijuana? They've learned to say no. Okay, it's a discipline. If you discipline in one thing, you're disciplined in many things. You're more likely to succeed in life if you got that discipline.
If you're watching and there's a part of this that you would like us to explore, please let us know, because we're here for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, for giving us your time again this week.
Absolutely. I'm here for you, Jason.
Thank you. And you guys at home, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. And as I mentioned before, Rabbi Federow has his own playlist, so you can watch all this stuff now without any other people getting involved. Just click on the playlists on the front of the page of my YouTube channel. And so thank you all, and we'll see you all again very soon.